Welcome to the Authentic Sales Leader Podcast, where we bring on exceptional sales leaders to dig into their stories, experiences, get their advice, and most importantly, learn what it means to them to be an authentic sales leader. I'm your host, Colin Mitchell, and I suggest that you grab a notebook and a pen as every episode is packed with their wisdom and knowledge. All right, welcome to another episode of the Authentic Sales Leader, brought to you by Humantic AI. I'm Colin Mitchell, the host, and today I'm excited. I have Adam J on today. He is the CRO over at Falkon. Adam, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I am doing good. Been looking forward to having you on the show. Love the content that you put out around leadership quite regularly. So I know that you're going to have a lot of great insights to share with our listeners. But before we sort of jump into some of that stuff, just give us a little bit of background on your story and kind of what has led you into leadership.
I was always that guy that said I was never going to get into sales leadership, never going to get into sales, right? Both my parents were in sales. My dad sold... we could call it sales. My dad sold timeshares. I grew up in Vegas, little fun fact. And he sold timeshares, which to me is like the sleaziest of sales. He would come home after working all day and be like, don't ever buy a fucking timeshare. They're garbage. Meanwhile, that's what's putting food on the table. So my opinion of sales was like really unethical. I was like, I'm going to do anything else. And I got into radio for a bit. I worked for a station out in Vegas. I did overnights, and then I was promoted to afternoons, and I think I was making like $10.75 an hour at the time. No money in radio unless you're going to have a syndicated morning show. And I started dating a girl who worked in pharmaceuticals. Saw that she was making six figures working what we call T to T, so Tuesday to Thursday, 10 to 2. I was like, this is my next gig. This looks pretty cool. So got into pharma, realized very quickly it's not real sales. You're a glorified caterer. You're just like dropping off lunches at doctors' offices and having them sign something for their samples, and hated life. And somehow got recruited to what back then, going back 15 years ago, almost 20, was like the creme de la creme sales job, which was medical device sales. It's like, this is cool. So I'm going to go spend some time in the operating room, and really learn how to sell. And what I realized was I love selling. I still love selling and closing deals and being involved in deals. But what really got me excited was teaching others and helping others learn how to sell and how to lead, and giving them kind of those skills that you didn't get in sales training, because sales training is like scripting to this book and this like one script and the one thing, but doesn't prepare you for the real world. We would have a saying, and I'm sure it's still around, of like the day you get out of training, forget everything you learned in training, and your field sales trainer is going to show you how to really do it. So I got into sales management in medical device, learned, all the basics of like what they said was sales management, right? Challenger and spin and disc and all that. And moseyed my way over to technology and just really learned that I love developing leaders. I have a passion for it. I think that it's one of those areas where no one teaches you. Like I remember my first management job was like, hey, guess what? You're the number one rep. Now you're a manager. Go have fun. And the top rep is not always the top manager.
No,
oftentimes they're not.
Worst. They're typically
right.
The worst.
So I figured if I could find a way to help other people do it and do it better, that's kind of my calling, right? Like I love revenue and I love seeing the needle go up and to the right. But when people ask me, like, how do you define yourself as a leader? To me, it's how many folks did I get promoted into the right role? And that's a very, very nuanced answer, Colin. It's not how many BDRs or AEs or how many AEs became managers. How many folks did I get promoted to the right role that they wanted to be in and should be in? Is kind of how I want to define my legacy.
Yeah. And that's a tricky one, right? And I think you said emphasis on right role there, right? And so how do you go about that? Because the role that they want versus the role that they're maybe best suited for can often be different.
It oftentimes is. And I think it starts with what those initial conversations look like. And I'm very clear with BDRs or AEs that this linear path of BDR to AE or BDR to BDR manager AE to manager, manager to director, director to VP. Whoever drew that out on some piece of paper and said, this is the path that you have to go on, was full of shit, because it's not. And I think too many people want to get into leadership because they're told to get into leadership. And it's really understanding and helping people understand their strengths, where, they can really excel, and where they could have the biggest impact, versus I need to focus on becoming a manager. And I think the best example I have is, one of my previous roles, I had a phenomenal customer success leader. She led our CS org, and everyone was telling her, oh, we were opening a director role, and you need to apply for that. That's the next logical step, right? You're a manager, so now you got to go be a director and get that $15,000 more of a pay raise. And she hated it. Her and I were talking. We were talking about career development and what her passions were, and I try to really understand my team on a deeper level of the numbers they bring in. Like, everyone's comfortable sharing a certain amount, and some people are certainly more open than others, but I want to know about your wife, your husband, your kid, when your anniversary is, what makes you tick, and really get to know you. And I think if I'm doing my job as a leader, we could develop that, personal relationship as well. But what I found out is, like, her true passion was product. Like, she really wanted to have an input. Like, based on all her time talking to customers and being in a customer facing role, she really developed a passion for product and helping build the product and where the product needs to go, from, a UI and UX standpoint. So we got her over to product. Like, she took arguably a pay cut, but it was a promotion to go be a product manager and work her way up in that org. And initially when I met with her, she's like, well, I'm going to go for this, CS director role, because that's the next step, right? Like, no one's ever going to let you don't want to lose me in the CS org. And you're right. I didn't. And I could give you so many examples of this happening. I didn't want to lose her, and it hurt me. But as a lead, and when I say me, like, it hurt our numbers. But as a leader and as someone who wants to get people where they want to go and see her thrive, I needed to prepare to backfill her properly and get her where she wanted to go, because she was going to offer much more value to the org in a role where she was happy doing what she wanted to do and what her skill set was, versus just kind of positioning her in a box. Because one of two things is going to happen. We identified she wanted to be in product. There was no doubt about that. She either going to do that with us, or she's going to go do that with someone else. I would much rather her do that with us and hang on to that skill set and continue to grow her, than arbitrarily put her in this role knowing that it's not where she wants to be and she's going to leave anyway.
Yeah. And I think that there's a few things there that stand out, right? You only come to that realization as a leader if you spend the time to get to know your people.
Every leader has, like, oh, we're going to have our one-on-one, right, Colin? Like, we're going to go over our numbers, and we're going to go over, pipeline, and let's talk about growth. And in the last 2 minutes, like, hey man, like, let's talk about your career development and tell me about your life and what's going on. And, like, all that says is I don't give a shit. Like, it's some afterthought. I have very separate career development meetings with my team. Everyone who starts on my team, within a month, I build out a career development plan that I've taken with me and iterated year over years to understand, like, where do you want to go next step? Where do you want to go? One of the questions on there is literally, what's your crazy ass dream? Like, where do you see yourself, like, long term, whether it's here or anywhere? And you have to build that comfort that people are comfortable saying, hey, like, I'm not going to be here in 5 years. I don't want to be. I want to go open my own business, or I want to go do whatever. That's okay. Can I get the best out of you while you're here? And can I help you grow as a person and make you better? That when you leave, I've gotten everything out of you that I can, and I've given you everything that I could give you, then I'm a happy person, man.
Yeah, that's huge, is creating that safe place where people feel comfortable even being honest with you about what their big aspirations are, right? Because I think a lot of people are scared to say, hey, Adam, like, I want to, be a founder. I want to start my own company, right? Unless you've made it a safe place to say those type of things. Because, a lot of people, I mean, even you see people working at places that are, like, scared to talk about their side hustle.
We could go on a whole topic about side hustles and LinkedIn posts, and people are, I've been with Falcon. I'm on week number 7. And I was interviewing a few other places. And I do some coaching on the side. I'm working on some leadership stuff on the side as well. And I'm super transparent about it. But one of the folks that I interviewed with ultimately got an offer from, put in the offer letter that 100% of my time had to be dedicated to company XYZ. And I pushed back because I've seen similar wording where it's like 100% of working hours has to be dedicated. And I probably even wouldn't sign that these days. But they were like, oh no, like we work from home, right? What is working hours? And I pushed back and their answer was like, no, like if you want to come lead our sales org, like you can't have a side hustle. Like this is all you can do. And like that blew my mind. Like I want to go help my team with their side hustle and help them grow and help them become a better person. Like if you can get your job done in 6 hours or 7 hours and you're killing it, like God bless you. Like, I don't want you to be here 60 hours a week. I believe so much in, I hate the term work-life balance because it's so cliche, but like you can't, live to work every day and you have to be a bigger person than XYZ company. Because in my opinion, it, number one, makes you more well-rounded. It makes you a better person. And if you get to explore your passions on the side, it allows you to decompress. It makes you a stronger player at work. But like telling someone like, oh, I own you is basically what it said. Yeah, no. Yeah. You don't own me and you certainly don't own my LinkedIn either.
I think you hit the nail on the head on a couple of points there is you want your people to show up and be the best version of themselves in their role. Right. And so to handcuff them to say, you can't do this, or you need to fit inside of this box in order to work here means you're going to have unhappy people and they're not going to be showing up as the best version of themselves. And you're going to have a serious turnover problem.
But how often does it happen? I mean, think about it. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of like naming names, but look at the turnover problems. It's crazy.
And the crazier thing is, Adam, is what you're saying here is really, you and I are saying it's crazy, but it's more the norm. Like that is the standard.
And that is the problem, is that it is the standard, is that we are fortunate to be in places where that's not the norm for us. And for most of the people I associate with, personally, it's not. But if you broaden out other than like my friends, like it is the norm. And in not just companies, but there's whole industries where it's the norm. And I think we're going to start to see, and we have, the tides change a little bit. The economy is very different right now, as everyone knows, and I think we're seeing a bunch of shifting factors, and the changes in the economy certainly haven't stopped. They're going to continue to change, but more and more people are going out and becoming, I'll use the term solopreneurs or part-time solopreneurs. It's a tough word for me. And it's only going to continue. And by handcuffing people and saying they can't do it, arguably is going to push them to want to do it more. And it's going to create a talent problem, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're already seeing it where, folks are, nervous, and rightfully so, to 100% rely on their W-2 income.
When you look at some of the best minds out there, everyone will tell you, and it's not even just sales leaders that you and I would respect, any financial leader would tell you not to rely just on your W-2 income, that you're crazy not to diversify your income stream. What that used to mean is like have your W-2 job and go out and like try to get a rental property or try to do something else. But now it's, have 5, 6, 7, 9 different income streams that come from your rental property or your side hustle or your podcast or your Etsy business. Or I had a sales leader that worked for me back at Swag Up who ran a charcuterie business. Like that was her passion on the weekends. And you'd be amazed the tens of thousands of dollars a year, Colin, that she would bring in from charcuterie. Profit, by the way. Like you have to diversify because unfortunately, no matter how good you perform, no matter how good the company is, there's factors that are out of your control. And if you get that phone call or that Zoom one day and you're only relying on that W-2, you have nothing.
Now let's let's give leaders the benefit of the doubt for a second here. And, how what is a good way to approach this, right? Where it's not just totally free for all. And, there's got to be some guardrails around, because you see this as well out there where people are doing great on social and getting lots of engagement and even getting jobs just based on their social engagement alone that they're not even qualified for. And at some point it gets a little bit out of hand, right? So how does a leader support their people to say, hey, here's sort of the guide rails. We have a job to do. What you do in your free time, or if you get your job done in, X amount of hours, that's totally fine. Don't care. And you're obviously free to do whatever you want, but how do you create some, good guidelines to not necessarily put people in a box or put handcuffs, but support them properly where, they are doing their job well and also dedicating time to maybe something else?
It all comes down to, and it all starts with open and honest communication, right? You have to build that trust and build that relationship with folks that you're having open and honest dialogue about what those expectations are during the quote work day. What your, for lack of better terms, KPIs and output, requirements are. And then being transparent, as far as what is and is not acceptable from a side hustle standpoint. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, Colin, listen, man, like our customers, our business hours are whatever, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. During that time, the expectation is that you're doing ABC, and certainly listen, man, it's a sales job. If you need to go take an hour to do something, by all means, if you're hitting your numbers, I don't care if you work 10 to 6, 9 to 5, or frankly, 10 to 2. But what I want to make sure is that when you are here, you are focused on work, that we are moving things in the right direction, and that we're supporting one another. And outside of work, to your point, I want to help you succeed. I think my job as a leader is not just to help you succeed internally, but externally as well. So if there's anything I could do for you in that sense, let's have that dialogue and let's talk about it, and I'll be your biggest champion. And I think that when you do that and you encourage people and let them know that you are, rooting for them and their cause, they're much more open and honest with you versus doing it behind your back. But you hit on something that resonates with me, which is people getting jobs that they're not qualified for. And we all have imposter syndrome, right? Myself included. There's certainly days I wake up where I'm like, how the hell did I get here? Because I don't know, dude. And I think that a healthy bit of imposter syndrome is a good thing. I think what you have now is people who everyone's an influencer and everyone's an expert. I've been in sales for 2 minutes, so I'm qualified to tell you how to run a sales process. And it's so important that people vet out who they listen to, and who they take advice from. Just because someone has a platform doesn't mean they should have a platform. And you got to be careful because you're having a lot of everywhere from, I don't want to say BDR because that's, truly should be an entry level role, but from enterprise AEs up to CROs that are positioning themselves as something that they're not. And then they get into the seat and it becomes painfully obvious. And that's a very, very expensive mistake for the company to make. And you have to be so careful not to vet someone just off their LinkedIn presence or the fact that, they put together some framework and they're selling it for $99.99.
That's kind of, you got to weigh I think people are making hiring decisions based on people's brands and overlooking, thinking they have this huge influence. This is going to drive awareness and, leads for us or whatever the case is. Are people starting to weigh that into the equation of maybe this person gets a job over that person versus influence and brand?
Yes, I think they are. And I'm going to tell a relatively personal story and try not to use names and want to be careful not to hinder anyone. But we had a situation recently where someone was hired because of their brand. It was the primary reason they were hired. They were, had a great brand out there on LinkedIn. People, quote, respected them and their advice. And what we found is that brand actually hurt us more than helped us for a couple different reasons. Number one, this person was more concerned about their brand than the company. And even when they got hired, it was all about, got to get those 5 LinkedIn posts up per day and everything's got, I got to build that brand. And then to do that, a lot of sensitive company conversations were being shared on LinkedIn. One of which, like before I got hired, it was posted that the person I was replacing wasn't going to be there anymore. That person didn't announce that they were leaving. That's a problem. But it does. I know many sales leaders who, if you're looking at, 2 different candidates and someone has a brand and a following, that is going to cause them to want to sway towards that person. And I think if you're not careful and you're hiring based on a brand someone created versus truly hiring for skill set, you're going to get yourself in a situation where the brand is only going to get you so far. At the end of the day, you could bring all the people you want. If you don't have the skills to, do your job, you're going to have an issue. I think it happens more often than it should. And I think it's something that when you're building out hiring processes as a sales leader, and you're interviewing and you're screening, it's certainly something that needs to be addressed, head on.
Well, we're just about out of time, Adam. This was a lot of fun. Didn't expect it to go here, but I think this is a super relevant topic for a lot of sales leaders as they're trying to navigate some of these new things they didn't have to deal with. Any final thoughts on what you think it takes to be an authentic sales leader, and then where is the best place for people to get into your world?
Yeah, I think so. Final thoughts on how to be authentic. The cliche answer is just be authentic, but you can't do that. It's to be an authentic sales leader and be good at being a leader in general. You have to care about other people, and you have to be willing to put other people first. And I think when I look at the best leaders I've worked with, and the leaders I strive to be, it's the ones that don't need their name in the spotlight. It's all about their team. When I have someone tell me, "Oh, you did a great job," like my common answer is like, I have 20 something people that make me look really good. My job is to work for them, to empower them and to make them better. So if you want to be an authentic sales leader and you want to be great, it's you wake up every day thinking, how can I make other people better? Would be my one piece of advice. My world is only LinkedIn. I don't tweet. I don't do Facebook. I don't do a whole lot of things. But LinkedIn, super simple, /Adam, B as in boy, JAY.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Authentic Sales Leader Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, the best way to share your gratitude is to share the show or drop us a review on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, keep it authentic.